All right, this is our sixth article of the week, and the title of this article is The Golden Age of Radio. And our focus for this article of the week is going to be text structures. That means how nonfiction texts are organized, how they're put together. You know from fiction that fiction is organized by the exposition, the rising action, the climax, falling action, and resolution. And it's pretty much the same for all of all stories, like novels and short stories. But for nonfiction, there are several different. We're going to talk about 5 different text structures this week, and we're going to use the golden age of radio to learn about them. So on your screen, you should have the organizer for Cornell Notes that look like this. And go ahead and put in the title, The Golden Age of Radio, so you know what article these Cornells match with, and then you can put your name at the top. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to kind of highlight the different sections of your notes today. Our headings are, first, we have an introduction like we usually do with our articles of the week. Then we have some short, I'm just going to preview the text, some short different sections with the different headers, and they are the early years, the golden age, fireside chats, War of the Worlds, and the end of the golden age. And then at the end of your notes, like you always do with Cornell Notes, you're going to write a summary, and we're going to practice that objective summary using our organizer, where you name it, verb it, include the central idea, and then 3 details that support that central idea. So we'll get to that after we finish taking notes for those different sections, okay? So you can pause this video between each section, and then you can jot down the key facts for each section as we go along. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my copy of the article. And you should have a paper copy of the article on your desk, so if you can't see it clearly on the screen, you can certainly follow along on paper. All right, the golden age of radio. Introduction. Americans today can communicate on countless types of devices in countless ways in an instant. It wasn't always that way, though. The invention of the radio allowed families to receive messages quickly. The invention changed the way families received information, music, and other entertainment forever. All right, we're going to pause there, head back to your Cornell notes, and let's think about some key facts from that really short introduction. We might only get 1 or 2 facts because of the length of it. So I would probably talk about this last sentence. I think that's probably the most important fact from this introduction. The invention of the radio changed the way families received information, music, and other entertainment forever. So I'm just going to include that one sentence for my notes. The invention of the radio changed, let me go back and look at it again, changed the way families received information, I-E-V-E-D. That's always a tricky spelling for me, the word received. I always have to think about it a little bit harder. Information, music, and other entertainment forever. All right, that's really the most important fact from the introduction. All right, I'm going to bring my cursor down, get a bullet ready for the next section that's titled The Early Years. The first successful radio transmission was completed by its Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing his first name right, but I do know his last name is Marconi, in 1895. Radio waves, or electromagnetic waves, were used for communicating over long distances from a transmitter to a receiver. The first radio broadcast for the purpose of entertainment was broadcast in 1905. On Christmas Eve, Reginald Fessenden's audio message included music from a violin and the reading of the Bible passages. During World War I, radio became an important way for military forces to pass along information. After the war, radio stations began to open in the United States. The first news broadcast went out in 1920, and soon more news and entertainment programs entered the home of listeners. So if I'm going to put down some information, I've noticed some dates, some years, and each year kind of marks an important event in the history of the radio. So that's how I think I'm going to go about adding to my notes. So the first date I see is 1895. The second date is 1905. And then the third date is 1920. So I'm just going to list it by date, 1895, and put a little hyphen there. In 1895, Marconi made the first successful radio transmission. And I'm not going to write his first name because it's too difficult. So I'm going to make it simple. Marconi made the first radio transmission. Okay. The second date that was listed was 1905. So 1905. It says the first radio broadcast for the purpose of entertainment was in 1905. So first radio broadcast for entertainment was made. And then that final year was 1920. It says the first news broadcast went out in 1920. 1920, first news broadcast. Now you could add other things, how the military and during World War I used the radio to help pass along information. You could add some details about what was heard on Christmas Eve in 1905. But really, for your Cornell notes, we just want some basic facts. We don't need to get into a whole lot of detail. Okay, this is just kind of mapping your way through the text, so you can kind of see what you've read as you go through it. Just the main facts. All right, I'm going to move that down and get my bullet ready for the Golden Age. Here we go. The Golden Age. The Golden Age of radio began in the 1930s and lasted until the 1940s. In the beginning of the decade, about 12 million Americans owned radios. By 1939, 28 million people had radios. It was credited for uniting communities and families as they gathered around for the evening broadcasts. So if you look over to our text feature, which is that photo of a family from the 1930s, you can see them kind of sitting around that wooden box. That wooden box is the radio, and it was large. It was like a big piece of furniture. Remember, there's no television. This was before television was invented. So this was what they would sit around to be entertained and to get the news. And the whole family gathered around it. It was kind of a family event. So I'm back to the text, second paragraph. Radio opened up a whole new world of music for listeners. Future musicians were inspired by what they heard coming across the airwaves. Famous symphonies began to broadcast their performances. Country music did especially well on the radio, with shows like the Grand Ole Opry becoming platforms for talented artists. Radio gave musicians a way to achieve national fame and recognition. Radio became the central form of entertainment. Each day, Americans could hear plays, variety shows, stories, game shows, and talent shows. Families could even tune in for a play-by-play of their favorite team. And then right above this, the end of this section, we see a newspaper ad from 1922 that encouraged families to buy a radio for $75 in 1992. And that's about over $1,000 today. So that was a lot of money for these people, $75. Because of inflation, now it's a radio would cost like that over $1,000. So it says, make it a radio Christmas. and they're just, I can't read all of the detail there, but you can kind of see um, the different prices for different parts of the radio, the hardware for it. So we're going to go back to the golden age. I'm not going to put the notes in this time. I want you to put the notes in. So go back and kind of see the details that you think are the most important for this section. I would include 3 bullets for this section, just the most important key details that come from this section. So pause the video and add those to your notes, and then come back for fireside chats. All right, you should have 3 bullets of key information for the golden age. Now we're going to move on to fireside chats. This is a very short section, so we might get 1, maybe 2 bullets here. During World War II, President Franklin D. Roosevelt developed a show called Fireside Chats. And there you can see a picture of President Roosevelt right there. This is where he's delivering his fireside chats. You can see all the different news organizations, NBC, CBS, and some other ones that aren't around today, MBS and Blue. But it says his show gave relief to many during World War II as loved ones served overseas and money was scarce. So he came on regularly and updated them on the war effort so that they would understand what's happening overseas during the war. And they didn't have to wonder or wait for letters to arrive in the mail. They could get immediate information, which was great for the families of the enlisted. So the name came from the presumption that families would gather beside the fireplace to tune in. That's why they're called fireside chats. Americans loved this time with their president and felt he was speaking directly to them. During his 12 years as president, from 1933 to 1945, he gave 31 radio addresses. He explained his policies and decisions and gave updates on the war and the nation's struggling economy. Americans loved Roosevelt's calm and confident voice in a time of uncertainty. All right, so I want you to go back to your notes. I want you to give me a couple of facts about fireside chats. You might want to focus on who gave the fireside chats and why he gave the fireside chats. So focus on who and why for the fireside chat section. Pause the video, do that, and come back for the War of the Worlds. All right, this is my favorite section, and you got a little bit of information today when I showed you the video about the War of the Worlds. This is just an amazing thing that happened. It was an accident that happened, and it became what was just going to be a little, radio play, and it turned into a major national event. It's called War of the Worlds. One of the most famous radio plays of all time aired on October 30th, 1938. So you can imagine it's the day before Halloween. Everyone's a little tense and they're spooked pretty easily around this time of year. So just kind of keep that date in mind. Members of the Mercury Theater performed their Halloween show, the adaptation of the H.G. Wells novel, War of the Worlds. The director and narrator was a well-known actor by the name of Orson Welles. The show was scripted to sound like a regular broadcast, but would be interrupted by a series of breaking news updates. The fictional breaking news updates warned of an alien invasion that became increasingly more dangerous, culminating with the aliens unleashing toxic gas in New York City. Wells had told the audiences that the story was fiction at the beginning of the show, but many had turned it on after it began. Many didn't realize that the radio show was fiction. They believed they were really hearing news reports about an alien invasion and began to panic. By the end of the show, word had spread around the city of the alien attack. CBS News and the local newspapers were flooded with calls questioning the invasion. A local mayor was furious because his small town had mobs of panicked people in the streets. So that's just an interesting side story where the radio, if it's the radio and the impact it can have on people, in this case, kind of a negative impact because they didn't all get the message that the whole thing was fiction. They thought it was real. So we're going to go to the War of the Worlds section and 2 to 3 bullets of information about what War of the Worlds was and what happened. Maybe you could focus on what it was meant to be and what actually happened after it, the cause and the effect sort of way of thinking, if you want to think about it that way. I'm going to pause the video so that you can do that, and we'll come back to the last section called the end of the Golden Age. All right, this is the final section. It's pretty quick, 1 paragraph. The Golden Age of radio came to an end in the late 1940s with the invention of the television. It quickly became the preferred entertainment. Radio did, however, remain a popular way to bring music into one's home for many decades to come. Although radio today faces tough competition with online music streaming platforms, it is still a popular way to listen to music. Okay, so we need to come up with 1 to 2 facts for this section. You might want to talk about when the Golden Age happened and why it happened. When and why. I want you to focus on that and add those 2 bullets into your notes for the Golden Age of radio. Let me put my bullet back. Oops, I'm having trouble with my... Okay, you get the idea. So you add those 2 bullets, when it happened and why it happened, and then come back for our final section. All right, by now you should have facts for all the different sections of the article. And what I want you to do now is, knowing what you know about the article and how it's all put together, I want you to decide what the central idea is, okay? You're going to start with the article title, and I'm going to do this first part with you. This is the topic sentence of your objective summary. So the title is The Golden Age of Radio. You always start with the title of the text. Then you're going to pick a verb. You could pick, if you look on my chart on the whiteboard, I've got 9 different verbs to choose from. I believe one of those verbs is explains. I'm going to choose explains, but that's not the only verb. You can pick a different verb if you want to. And the central idea is, what is the author saying about the main topic? Now remember, the main topic is the radio, okay? And the article is about the golden age of radio. And it's also about when it was invented, and it takes us all the way through when the television kind of took over. So we call that the golden age of radio. So I'm going to say the golden age of radio explains. I can't say the golden age of radio because that's the title. We don't want to repeat it. So I want to say the golden age of radio explains the development of the radio from its invention to I'm going to say to its from its invention. Let's go back. Let's look. Let's think about this. This is good. I have to struggle a little bit with this one. So it's from the early years to the end of the golden age. I'm going to say from its invention to its replacement with the television. So it's kind of long and wordy, but it gets the job done. The golden age of radio explains the development of the radio from its invention to its replacement with the television. I'm going to say by the television. Different word there. So I need you to go back into the article and find 3 key details that support this central idea. Might want to talk about who invented it and when it was invented, since invention is part of the central idea. Maybe a key detail from the golden age, why it was important during the golden age. And then the final detail about how the television replaced it and when the television replaced it. And I believe all 3 of those details in that order would be a great way to put together your objective summary paragraph. Once you do that, you can turn this assignment in and move on to the next assignment in Google Classroom.